Welcome to the Next Level Casino Careers Show, a series highlighting industry tips and insights from the best minds in the casino and hospitality industry. Enjoy the show.
The one, the only Joe Pulizzi. How are you doing?
Great, Cal. Thanks for having me.
I'm so honored to have you on the show, Joe. I know we talked just for a few minutes, but it's a big week. When you think of the term content marketing, you're kind of like the OG. Understood content marketing has been around for a long time, but you really capitalize with creating Content Marketing Institute and then Content Marketing World and the work that you're doing now with the Tilt and just so much more. I have your bio in front of me, but before we start, I think your knowledge and expertise is going to be huge. As we discussed, I think there's so much opportunity in casino and hospitality to learn from brands and marketers who do content marketing well. So once again, just to start, thanks for joining.
No, hey, we need to lower the expectations right off the bat. So let's start there. No, I'm happy to be on. I have been in this industry almost 25 years now. So, I mean, before the term was content marketing and, people were just trying to figure this out and moving from, hey, I got all this advertising interruption and how do I build relationships with my customers outside of that? And then we got into publishing and Google and SEO and now into podcasts and TikTok and God knows what else. But, what you've seen is the evolution of every company out there, for the most part, is becoming a publishing entity. And you really have to do that whether you like it or not. And so we're seeing this move from you have companies that sell products and services, and you have companies that publish. Well, those are all the same thing now. And that's been an evolving process over the past 2 decades. Yeah.
And then last, on a personal note too, I think this is valuable for the listeners. It was 2015. And at the time, I'd been in the business about 5 years, and our CMO at the time, he left. This was for properties in Arizona. And I was just kind of searching, like, how do I kind of take my education to the next level? I looked at MBA, but really I got into podcasts, ebooks, and through that kind of search, I think it was a Forbes article, or maybe it was Fortune. I think it was Fortune. It listed epic content marketing as a must read. So, I did the audio book. I was just fascinated that, like, wait, there's a different way of marketing, but actually it's been around a while. I think at the time you talked about John Deere as an example, the Lego movie as an example, all these different efforts where you put value first. And then that builds an audience. And if you build that audience, you can leverage that to different revenue streams, different revenue channels. Like it was such a fascinating thing to me. And it's funny at the time because our CMO at the time when he left, which is something you talk about, he had this idea that if you're ever familiar with Arizona and spring training, it takes on a life of its own. Like for 5 weeks there in Scottsdale. So his thought was like, maybe we could do a content marketing strategy around being the go-to source around spring training. The property is right next to Salt River Fields, Talking Stick. But it took a while to have it click. I didn't understand what he was doing until I heard your book, the audio book. And I was like, man, this is just such a fascinating subject. So fast forward 2018, I go to Content Marketing World, get your email, ask you to be on the show. And you're here. And I guess I want to start here. Let's start, just level set everyone. Content marketing. That term is used a lot, but even within the realm of casino hospitality and just other marketers in general, I don't think people really understand the definition, at least kind of the way that you define it. They have to say, I'm in marketing, I put out content, content marketing. So if you wouldn't mind, break it down for us as far as what is true content marketing versus what do maybe a lot of marketers, advertisers still do.
Sure. Yeah. I think that when most people think of content marketing, they just think of it's not ads. It's anything that's not ads, which basically becomes digital marketing of some kind. Oh, if I'm doing an audio or a video or text in some way that is not directly promoting my product and service, maybe that's content marketing. So it's a little bit deeper. It's a strategy. What we want to do is we don't want to interrupt our customers. We want to focus on a very particular audience. We want to drive, as you said, value. So how can we deliver valuable, relevant, and compelling information to that specific audience over a long period of time in order to see some kind of behavior change. So instead of what most companies do, they lead product first. What we're doing is we're going to switch that. We're going to lead audience first. We're going to focus on the pain points of that audience and say, how can we deliver something amazing to that audience that they're going to become to know, like, and trust us. And because they know, like, and trust us, then they're going to do all the things that you ultimately want them to do as a marketer so that you can keep your job. So that's what do those things look like? Well, initially they look like blogs. And so, the output of doing a regular consistent blog is you get found on the top 10 of different Google searches, and that would be wonderful. And then maybe that would lead into a regular email newsletter, which is still as big as it's ever been, maybe bigger than ever now with all the changes that are happening in social media. But you want to deliver a very specific targeted email newsletter, very consistent, and then turn that into a podcast, something like you're doing right here, Kyle, on a regular basis, delivering value. You're not talking about your products and services. You're talking about something informational that you're going to position yourself as the leading informational expert. And when you do that, people go to trust you. I've got nothing against doing this on, YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and whatnot. I just have my concerns, and maybe we can talk about some of the social media concerns that are out there where you don't necessarily control the distribution. And Google and TikTok, they like to change the rules on an ongoing basis and say we're going to distribute content this way and you're allowed to do this, and that's fine. They're private companies that can do it whatever they want, but that's sort of how it comes about, and it takes time to do this. Most organizations will start and they'll go 3 to 6 months, and they'll expect a lot of results from their blog or e-newsletter or podcast or YouTube series or whatever the case is. And these things take time. And I come from publishing, Kyle, as you know, and some of these initiatives take 12, 18 months, 24 months, 3 years really to make an impact. That's why from when a publisher starts a content brand, they have a 3-year plan. Why do they have a 3-year plan? Because sometimes it takes 3 years to build an audience that you can monetize in a profitable manner. So that's essentially what content marketing is. We're not leading through products. We're leading through solving the customer's pain points. And if we do that on a consistent basis, they come to know, like, and trust us. And when they know, like, and trust us, they're more likely to buy from us.
That the patience you hit on, that's so key. And I have found that firsthand. We kind of stumbled into this ourselves. Back in COVID, we did a full expansion project. We had to hire 3,000 plus employees, and we didn't have the resources you typically would. So we really had to think outside the box, and we did a lot of different things as far as opening a recruitment center in a mall to have that personal touch point, still with safety in mind, right? And then also virtually, we did virtual events, and we found that doing these kind of panels and these interviews, there's real value there, and people liked it. And then we expanded, we included partners and people from other industries. And then kind of we put pen to paper and put the strategy together. And to your point, it took about 12 months just to launch the microsite, get the content. And then now in a lot of ways, we're just starting. This is episode number 15 on the podcast. We have a regular blog going out every 2 weeks. And something you talk about too is remain focused to a few channels before you expand. So I think we'll hit on that too.
Yep.
But going back, Joe, if you wouldn't mind, how did you get into this business, content marketing? If you wouldn't mind, for those who don't know you well and the work that you've done, kind of how did you get into this business? Kind of what's your quick origin story to, ultimately what you do today?
Yeah, I mean, happy to. I'll give you the 5-minute version. I was lucky enough to fall into a publishing position in 2000. I was in internal communications for an insurance company. I saw there's a job posting at a company called Penton, and Penton at the time was the largest business-to-business publishing company, and they had a small department called custom media. They were looking for a project manager. I'm like, what? First of all, what's custom media? And like, what is this all about? I'm like, oh, I can communicate, I can manage projects. So I ended up getting that role, the entry-level role, if you will, and just so lucky to fall into this area of custom media. So what did we end up doing is we were working with large B2B companies like Autodesk and Microsoft and Parker Hannifin, but instead of doing, having them sponsor trade shows we were doing or having them put ads into our magazines, we were talking to the marketing team about some of the communication challenges they were having and how they could solve them through telling stories. And those stories at the time came out mostly through print publications. So we were doing quarterly print magazines for these companies. We were sending them out to, 10,000 or 20,000 or 200,000 people, depending on who the target was. Very specific niche that they were going after, and we were delivering this value. And in those publications, they weren't talking about their products and services. So, which was, some of them did a little bit. You mentioned the John Deere example from 1897. They started the Furrow magazine, if you will. And the Furrow magazine, that never talked about John Deere products and services. It talked about how farmers can have a more profitable farm and the operations of a farm. So those are the types of things that I fell into, doing custom print magazines. And then it started to get into blogs and started to get into podcasts and webinars and online events and all sorts of stuff from 2000 to 2007. So it was probably about 2005, 2006, when it was so important for companies to have some kind of a strategy for search engines, because Google really started to take off, and you can't just create content about your products and service. Google doesn't care about that. They're not going to show that for any relevant keyword phrase. So people were like, oh, well, I have to start creating all this content, not based on my product and service, but based on what customers are searching for. Well, and then you find out you can't just gamify it anymore. You actually had to create really good content with really good writers and really good editors and do it on a consistent basis, so Google would make it so it's found. And then we were getting into Twitter and Facebook. And then companies were like, well, shoot, again, nobody's going to share my stuff if I'm talking about myself all the time. We have to talk about stuff our customers care about. So what are their pain points? What's keeping those customers up at night? Let's do that. And so 2005, 2006, I'm like, oh my God, this thing's going to be big. And I really thought this was going to be the thing. And in my interactions with different chief marketing officers, the best reaction I got was to the term content marketing. It's called custom media. It was called custom publishing. It was called branded content. But when I said content marketing, the marketers kind of piqued their interest up a little bit, because they're marketers. We're simple people. It's like, you got to call it something simple. We called it content marketing. And I left publishing in 2007 and started what became Content Marketing Institute. And I knew that this was going to be a thing, but we really had to focus on a lot of education. So we created the blog. We started doing some online training. We created, as you said, Content Marketing World, the event. That was in 2011. And then content marketing became the industry term. And now it is a core part of every company out there. And you're just seeing these huge content media divisions inside these companies. And it's still probably the greatest growth area for marketing right now, is not about talking about our products and services. It's about building an audience over a long period of time. And to do that, you've just got to tell the best stories.
Joe, has it always been that way? I want to ask it like this, because
Sure,
you would know better than I. But from what I do study about like older traditional print and advertising and marketing in the 60s, 70s, I read Ogilvy on advertising. It seems like, at least originally, at least for a while, in print specifically, ads were kind of native. And I could be getting this wrong, but it seems like when I would see an ad, there was tons of copy. If it was a household product, they would talk about testimonials, and it would be a full article on how this kind of enriches your life by using this product. And then somewhere along the lines, it seems like maybe we got away from that. We went to full page spreads with great imagery and a headline, and you know what I mean? So I guess my question is, has content marketing always been a differentiator and a value for marketers out there, even back in the 60s, 50s, whatever it may be?
It's always been there, but we've never known about it. I mean, even back to Ben Franklin had Poor Richard's Almanac. And why was that created? Because Ben Franklin owned a printing machine and wanted to sell more stuff, and thought he had to get a good example out there in order to sell. So Poor Richard's Almanac. So who knew that was going to be a thing? And then into the soap operas of the 30s, which started on the radio. That was Does Soap, which is Procter and Gamble, and into the soap operas that we know today. That was all started from a corporate initiative, because they wanted to reach a certain group of people, and they said, we better tell some really good stories. Now, when you got into, you say about the 70s, well, let's say 60s, 70s, advertising was absolutely the best way to go because there were only so many ways you could reach an audience. So you're like, okay, well, somebody, some magazine or some television station has this audience. So we're going to we can tell whatever stories we want. We could put lots of content in there. We could do it all as wonderful branding and pictures and feel good. It really didn't matter because you were going to get the attention regardless. So back in 1970, I would never say do a content marketing initiative. I would say advertising, like advertise everywhere because we can. And consumers didn't have any choice. Well, now today, they got a million choices, right? So they can, I mean, you barely have a second before, they'll look at your stuff and decide whether or not they want to engage in that piece of content. It's very hard to build a loyal audience. You have to work really hard at it. So that's the big game changer. It's the fact that anybody, and it's been democratized. Anybody can create content on any channel. We're competing with everything. You're competing with people in your own industry, and you're competing with Google and Netflix and Disney Plus and everything else. So we've got to be really good about this. So what I love is the fact that everyone listening to this you can employ a content marketing strategy. The challenge is it's harder than it's ever been before because everybody can absolutely do it. So you have to focus on what we call it a content tilt. What is your real differentiation? Like, how do you really stand out? What are you going to talk about that's really, really different and engaging? And how are you going to do that? And then you have to do so consistently. Most content marketing fails, Kyle, as you know, because they stop. Like people get to 9 episodes. People don't even know this. 46% of all podcasts have 3 or less episodes. I mean, just think about that for a second. It means a lot of people are starting stuff and they're stopping right away. It's hard work to do this. That's why there's not, media companies all over the place being successful. So yeah, I think it's changed quite a bit. It's the fact that the consumer is in complete control when they weren't before. And now we've got to act that way.
I think you kind of hit on it, Joe, but I think there's several reasons why people stop. But if you wouldn't mind, expand upon that, because something I think is human nature. This might be one reason, but I bet there's several. It's hard work, but it's also not a lot of fun when you put content out there. And to your point, it takes time to grow an audience. Yep. You only got a couple likes, you got a couple comments, sometimes no comments, so to get that buy-in, whether you work for an organization or you're doing it solo, which, I know you give advice both ways. But man, it's you really put yourself out there. And do you kind of have the licks to take the 1 to 2 likes, the kind of the necessary reps it takes to build an audience? I mean, I was listening to you and Robert talk about, I think Robert had a guest, and he was saying that you really don't hit your stride until 100 or so episodes in. Yep. So I guess my question is, what are some of the main reasons why people stop or a content marketing initiative really doesn't even take off before it even starts?
Yeah, it's funny. So a lot of people listening to this might know the name Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast is one of the most popular YouTubers on the planet, worth over $100 million now, has over 100 million subscribers on YouTube, really popular. Started in 2012, creating videos, didn't even get the right topic, a consistent topic for 3 years. And then by, I think it was 2016, had 30,000 subscribers today. So now 10 years later, consistently delivering on a particular niche, focused on that audience, and now is successful. So if Mr. Beast didn't go that 3 or 4 or 5 years to figure that all out, but I don't want to say that you can't have solutions or can't have a good success story before that, but it is very, very difficult to do that. So what you have to do is you have to really treat your content like a product. So when I go into, let's say it's a small company or a larger enterprise, basically what I'm finding is it's content run amok. They got blogs and podcasts and videos, and you're doing all the things. You're on Twitter and Facebook, and somebody's doing TikTok and Instagram Reels. They're doing all the things. The problem is they're jack of all trades, master of none. And you have to be master of something if you're going to be successful with content marketing. So when I go into a company, if you look at CMI research, Content Marketing Institute research, the average company does 13 to 16 different content activities. Basically, I'll go in and I'll say 5 or 6 of these, you got to kill. You got to kill so you can do 1 or 2 really well, because you can't get great at any one of these things by dabbling. And that's what most of us do, because we can't do everything. You can be everywhere if you want to. Are you going to get found? No. So what you want to really do is focus on, let's say, instead of being everywhere on every channel and doing all the things, you can say, I'm going to have an amazing podcast and the most remarkable email newsletter. And you're going to focus on that. And that's sort of your content business. And then you're going to use all these other things to market that. Like, and you might actually pay to advertise your content. And you want, just like you were launching a new product, how would you launch a product? You do PR around it, you do advertising around it, you do promotion. You have to do the same thing for your content. So what'll start out is you'll do your podcast, you'll get no listeners. It's a lot of us think because we're creating the content that it deserves to be found. It won't be. You have to create a whole promotion program just around the content. You have influencer programs for your marketing. You need to have an influencer program for your content. It's all the same stuff. And a lot of people don't realize this. So the more we take it seriously as a real business, because we're going up against, last I saw, 50 million content creators are out there as independent businesses trying to do this and make a living. We're just doing this as part of our marketing. Like, we got to figure this thing out because there's a lot of competition and they're putting everything they got into it. And you have to do the same thing as well. So it's finding that content tilt, consistently delivering. And when I say consistently delivering, that means if you make a decision to send out your podcast every Friday, you're going to do that for the next 100 weeks. I mean, that's like, just plan that you're going to, no, it doesn't mean you can't change it. Maybe you get some good reader or listener feedback or reader feedback and you want to change things, and that's all good. You always iterate through the process, but you have to deliver consistently over a long period of time. Build that audience, hopefully a proprietary audience like an email newsletter where you can control that data, and then you can start seeing that behavior change. I mean, it isn't rocket science. It's more of, okay, we're going to deliver something special. We're going to do it on an ongoing basis. We really care about our customers in this way. And by caring about them and showing that we care about them, hopefully, and that's the hypothesis, that it's going to come back to us in product and service sales or more loyalty or better yield on our customer base or whatever the case is.
Yeah, I think you hit on something too that I think of too as marketers just in general, is you really want to be in the routine business and habits. And that's what I found with podcasts. Like even yours, I just started listening. I've always listened to This Whole Marketing podcast. But through this process, I've also discovered the podcast you put out every Monday, and you do it every Monday, and you do it for, I think, 5 minutes, right?
5 minutes, Content Inc. podcast. Yeah. 5 minutes for the last 7-8 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you got me, right? And I think that's how it happens, but it takes time, to your point. Also, too, I wonder your take on this. I'm sure I kind of know the answer, but there's just so much more opportunity now going forward. I'll hit on some of the trend stuff in a little bit, but I don't know. I think about it like this. I'll use a personal example. So my grandfather just passed away about a year ago. And I never saw any videography or any movement of him. I always saw still photos when he was younger, right? When he was married to my grandma. And I saw this video of him moving at the wedding. And it was, must have been in the early 50s, 40s, somewhere in there. And it was mind blowing. I was like, I've never seen him like this. And I say that to set this up because I feel like, I think when I think about my kids, or just it's been both on a life personal level and then also as marketers, you build equity over time. And I think you make this comparison a lot with investing. The more that you put valuable content out there as a brand, the more that if you want to become a thought leader as a group or business or individual, the more you put it out there, you build more leverage and equity over time, because now there's this whole case of work and things that you've said, maybe stuff you're wrong, right? But either way, I think that builds trust. And those who are not starting on that, I think they're missing a huge opportunity. For those who are starting, whether they started 4 years ago, now they're going to be so much more ahead by building this kind of equity. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I can't agree with you more. I mean, you're talking about career-oriented person. You want to have a lot of options for financial freedom in the future. And the best thing you can do is make sure you look good on Google and you look good on these social media platforms. You look good on LinkedIn. So we get a lot of people reaching out to us, say, hey, we would like do you have any content marketing roles available? And if I do happen to go and look at that, I look at what does the world say they are? Yeah. What does Google say they are? I mean, and you need to make sure you have really good information out there. So are you posting regular videos on YouTube? Is that your thing? Or on LinkedIn, is it completely filled out? Do you have the right connections and doing all this? It doesn't take much to do these things, but you have to absolutely do that. So when I was I was starting to get my career going. I mean, the first thing I did was, well, I got to get a blog out there, consistent blog. What's my expertise? I want to be one of the leading informational experts about content marketing. Okay, well, good. That's what my blog is. I'm going to focus on the how-to and the strategy around content marketing, and I'm targeting marketers. That's my thing. So I'm going to 3 times a week, I'm going to do a blog post and give all my thinking away to, to target that group of people. And luckily, if you type in content marketing or Joe Pulizzi or whatever, you'll see that. You'll see all the stuff, and it's already filled out. But then somebody says, oh, I want to get started in content marketing. I'll say, create an audience. I don't care what industry it is. Just go create an audience, create a podcast and do it on a consistent basis, email newsletter, a TikTok channel, Instagram, whatever. But show the person, whoever you're going to get that job, that you can create an audience. And if you can do that, you can get a job anywhere in almost every industry, because you have an asset. That is an asset, that you have an audience. You could deliver something to that audience. Some people might want to pay you for access to that audience. You might actually could actually sell that to somebody else someday. Like, let's say it was a photographer. You love photography. He's like, oh, I'm going to create a blog about that. I'm going to teach people how to do something in a certain way on photography. Well, what if you got 10,000 subscribers to your email newsletter? And what if you got 100,000 people going to that site every month? Excuse me. Somebody would probably buy that for a lot of money. So that's your equity today, and it will help you get another job, and it will give you many other options into the future. But that's all about consistently delivering content to a particular group of people, solving those pain points, and then those options open up to you.
So Joe, if somebody kind of has their mission statement, they know their purpose, they kind of have a rough strategy. I'm sure it depends on the individual or the resources, but is there a personal favorite for you? This might kind of go back to what you said as far as like having owned channels versus rented channels. But if you're thinking about, okay, I'm going to start with a newsletter, I'm going to start with a podcast, or I'm going to start with whatever it may be, kind of how do you go about decision? And is there a personal favorite of yours?
So this is what's beautiful about, so you have the choice of audio, video, or text plus image. And you have all these platforms. You could have your own platforms like an email newsletter, and you could have rented platforms that on Facebook, Instagram, and whatever. The thing is, you get the choice. So you have whatever you want your knowledge base to be, whatever that is about. But what are you good at? So let's say you really enjoy the podcast radio type experience, if you will, and you're good at that, but you don't want to be on camera. Well, okay, that's a podcast is for you. What if you're a better writer? Okay, well, great. That's text. That's a blog. That's an email newsletter. What if are you really good on the phone and you like to go and record, short snippets all over the place? Well, maybe that's TikTok. Or maybe you understand the production capability. You can use Camtasia and can use other tools. Maybe you're going to do a YouTube series. So it's almost like the sorting hat for Hogwarts, right? You could take what you have, what your skills are, and make a decision on where you want to go with this thing. So that's where, now my favorite are, it's email and podcast because of the control we get, because those are assets you can do something with. If I have, I don't know, 250,000 people following me on LinkedIn. That's great. People will say, oh, that's wonderful, Joe, whatever. But they're not my connections. Those are LinkedIn's connections. LinkedIn can take those away from me at any. They could block me. They could change the rules in a second. So I have to make sure what I want to do is, okay, great. I have that access to those 250,000 people. I want to move them to something I can control and can measure and can do something with that tends to be podcast into an email newsletter, or maybe straight to the email newsletter, or I'll create a nice ebook where people can download that. Those are the types of things. So I use social media, yes, to build connections, yes, to use as a learning channel for me, but long term, it's marketing for my content. So that's how I'm looking at it that way, and that's how I would have everybody look at it. But if you create a YouTube channel that's off the hook, that's great. That's got 1 million followers or 10,000 followers is great. Well, or subscribers, at some point you're going to have to make the move and try to get that over to something you can control and not something Google controls.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I'm hearing you right, Joe, it's focus in on the channels that are organic to you that you feel comfortable with, but then also you should own that. Like, so an email, a podcast, because isn't there a little bit of risk involved if I only go and on TikTok?
You know, when you make a decision to go with a TikTok, first of all, that's another company. They can change the rules at any time. They can block you. I mean, if you look on Twitter, how many people have been blocked on Twitter after you put so much into it? I mean, it's frustrating if you go ahead and you build your audience and you don't control the distribution. It's very difficult. So, I mean, we've seen that before. When Google Plus came out, I remember working with a lot of large B2B companies that built out some amazing channels on Google Plus, and then all of a sudden Google comes out and says, I'm sorry, we're discontinuing Google Plus. And you're like, oh my God, we put millions of dollars into that channel, which by the way, will happen. I mean, who knows what's going to happen to Facebook as we know it? They're trying to figure out who they're going to be. They're completely changing their model. You look at TikTok, TikTok is not social media. It's content discovery. It's sort of a new form of social media where they don't care about interaction with other people. They're just trying to drive more eyes on content so they can drive advertising. So, and Instagram's completely changing their model from this to really from pictures to videos. So it's very difficult. These things are going to happen. Companies are going to do what they want for their shareholders and where they can get the most revenue. And you have to deal with it because they're not your channels. Fine. You're going to live with that world, live with the consequences. So you can say I can use those things and then move over. I'll give you a good example. I have a really good friend of mine created a site called Accidentally Wes Anderson on Instagram. And basically every day they put out an image, a travel image that looks like something out of a Wes Anderson movie. It's got well over, I think, 1.6 or 1.8 million subscribers. But what they've been doing over the last 3 years is moving to an email. So now they've got an email newsletter with, I think, over 100,000 subscribers. And when you talk to Wally Koval, who runs the site, say, Wally, what's more important to you? The 1.6 million followers you have on Instagram or the 100,000 followers or subscribers on email? And, he'll get kind of weepy about it. It's like, well, of course, Instagram's so important because that's where we got our start. But if you're asking me what's more valuable for the business, it's email. So make that transition when you get there. It won't happen right away. So if you start a YouTube channel or you start on TikTok, you're going to be on that for 6, 9, 12 months, and you'll continue to stay on that if it's working well for you. But at some point, you're going to come out with a secondary offer when you diversify your content to try to drive people to something you have control over.
Joe, great insights there. And one other tip. So we're going to try cutting, but if you heard a little bit of a mix up there, you should probably double check your internet. So there's a little bonus tip there. I disconnected from Joe from a minute, but glad I got him back on. Joe, I want to jump to a segment here we call the bigger picture. And we just kind of riff on kind of what you and Robert do, but sometimes it's a headline, sometimes it's a picture. So here, for those listening via podcast, Joe, I know you're a big Browns fan. And I was thinking about it this morning. The Browns won their season opener yesterday, I think by a 58-yard field goal.
First time in 17 years.
Yeah, since 2004. And I was like, why did that? I was like, oh, I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to trends. And as we talk about content marketing, the term, as you could say, 2004, where it kind of starts from a Google Trends perspective, and you just see kind of the rise. And I want to jump to the next picture. There's a video of you from 2009, and you've kind of touched on this, where you said, we are all publishers now. Looking back on just the rise of content marketing, kind of your career and what you said there in 2009, in 2022, looking back, do you feel like most marketers or people in marketing understand this and are executing on this now? Or are we still a little slow on this front? Just take it where you want. Just thoughts as it relates to your headspace back then and where we're at now and kind of the gap in between.
Well, man, so first of all, that video terrifies me. From 2019. I'm like, I really needed a tailor or something like that. But anyways, so we've seen so basically content marketing is one, right? Every company you go into, small, medium, or large, is working on some kind of a content marketing tactic or strategy. And I don't care if you call it content marketing or not, doesn't matter. You're working on a thing, you're trying to build an audience. That's kind of where I see the struggle at today, because we've had so many companies that have created content for the sale. Like, so you see a lot of lead generation stuff. You see a lot of stuff where here's a webinar, here's an ebook. I'm going to sign you up for this email newsletter because I'm going to hit you with, 6 sales calls or whatever. They've really been focused on quickly converting to a sale. And I think that's been at a fault for a lot of companies, instead of like what Robert Rose, my co-host of This Old Marketing, says, we've got to win their hearts first, and then you can sell them for the next 20 years. It's almost like an Amazon strategy where, Jeff Bezos, when he started the whole thing, that's all he was trying to do, is just saying, I don't want the one-time sale. I want to sell this customer for the next 30 years and to their kids. So that's what I want the kind of thinking to happen. So we have to have this long-term approach as we go. And that's where I think you're going to see the smart companies in 22, 23, 24 really focus on building an audience. And that means you have an opt-in audience of email newsletter subscribers. You have a membership of some kind that you can control and communicate on an ongoing basis and focus on those types of things. The other thing is that when I started in publishing, if you're in marketing, you really, if you start in publishing, there are 2 ways to grow if you're growing a publishing business. One's organic, and all the stuff that we're talking about on this program, and one is through acquisition. You go and buy out other properties for growth, and that's what every smart company does. But marketers don't do that, and they haven't done that with content marketing. So we've created all this stuff. We're always creating, but we're never looking at the second part of a smart publishing strategy, and that's acquiring. So you're seeing really smart companies like Salesforce and HubSpot right now. They're going out and they're buying small creators. And they're saying, okay, well, instead of waiting 2 years, 3 years to build an audience, we have some cash, we're going to go buy them. And you're going to see that really happen in the next 5 years. And it's going to go like crazy, because you have a lot of content creators building these amazing content brands that are willing to sell. You have a lot of companies out there that are impatient. They don't want to wait all this time, and it's already been done. So why should they create it? So we're going to go and buy it. So I think that's what you're going to see. And that's kind of what's been missing over the last 10 years. And I think it's a real part of a real strategic content approach, instead of just focusing on this lead gen, tactical, how quickly can we get these people to convert strategy.
Yeah, that acquisition piece, I know you talk about a lot, and it's interesting, especially for this audience, is to avoid some of what we've talked about, those heartburns. I think no matter what, there's going to be work involved, but if you can acquire those assets in that audience, that kind of helps fast forward the process, right? Versus starting from zero.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, take online gambling and some of these online Twitch sites. There's some amazing. So you might say, hey, we want to do that. We want to really create an audience about people that are interested in this kind of gambling, but it's going to take us a long time to do that. And we may not do it. Even if we have a strategy, it may not go well for us. So there's a lot to that hypothesis that may or may not work. But you have a lot of people out there that are already being successful. You might say, okay, well, let's either form an influencer relationship with them and figure that out, or let's go out and actually purchase that content brand if there is something to buy. So it's definitely an option. But when I started, this is back 10 plus years ago, when I was talking with some of these CMOs from these very large companies, and they were talking about, oh, you're kidding me? It's going to take us a year, 2 years, 3 years to get going. I don't want to wait that long. What's my option? And I said, okay, well, you can go out and buy some content brands, buy some media companies, buy some small content creators. And they were looking at me like I had 2 heads. And that's when I realized, in marketing, you're not taught about acquiring these types of things. You're taught about advertising. You're taught about price and promotion. You're not necessarily taught about, okay, there's an asset out there that has an audience that I could actually purchase. Is that a thing? I could purchase a blog. I could purchase a podcast. Yes, absolutely. And there are really smart companies out there doing that right now. And so we're talking about this like it's something new, which it sort of is right now. But in 5 years, you're going to see in every industry that this is going to be a pretty big thing. And that's why it's great for both sides. It's great for content creators that want to build something and then sell it. And it's great for brands that have no patience, but a lot of cash.
Yep, absolutely. I know this week is Content Marketing World. I wanted to go back to 2011. This is where this picture is from. In the event planning business, right? If you wouldn't mind, just kind of talk to lessons learned, right? As you launched Content Marketing World, this picture here, ultimately what it became. And then you're kind of doing it again, but just if you wouldn't mind, just kind of high level lessons from what it took to launch this kind of event and the success that eventually followed.
Wow, that's a great picture that we're looking at right now. So 2011 was the first year Content Marketing World. And first of all, one of the reasons why we were successful is because we had a long runway into it. So we started talking about doing that event in September 2010. And so basically we had 12 months to really start preparing and looking, and we could put together the partnerships to make it work. The second thing is we set very low expectations for that first year. The picture that you're showing is from the Renaissance in Cleveland, Ohio, and we reserved just one room at the Renaissance with very low expectations. And we were expecting or hoping for 100 people. I'm like, can I get 100 people to come to Cleveland for Content Marketing World, this event that is nothing right now, but we think it could be something. And then, of course, it's started to trend up and we started to get registrations in, and we ended up with 660 people that year and took over the entire hotel in the first year. That was made possible through lots and lots of partnerships. And this is not just with events, Kyle. This is with any content product. Any content product you launch, you will help it get onto steroids, if you will, if you partner with the right people and do it for more than just a transactional standpoint. So become friends with these people. So figure out where's your audience hanging out. And we did that. So where's our audience hanging out? And we partnered with all the picture that you're showing. They're almost all bloggers, speakers, authors that we partnered together with that all came and then promoted it to their audience, and their audience came. And that's how you do an event and make it work. It's not just off of, yes, do you want to build your own audience? Do you want to promote to them? Do you want to advertise the event? Absolutely. But the best long-term approach is you're going to reach out to audiences you don't have access to through friends and influencers of yours. So put together your list of 10, 20, 30 influencers. When I say influencers, that could be influence over 100 people, 500 people. Doesn't have to be huge. Just whatever makes sense to you, build relationships with them, figure out a win-win scenario for your partnership and get them involved. And that's why that was successful. And I guess the last thing I would say is Content Marketing World is now in its 12th year. It's an annual thing. Whenever you do anything content oriented, consistency, right? We do it. We plan like we're going to do it all the time. A research project, a YouTube video, a podcast, whatever. It takes a long time for these things to take off. And by the time we sold, my wife and I own Content Marketing Institute, and we sold in 2016. And that event that year was 4,000 people. So that's the kind of growth you can get by focusing on a topic that's underserved, and then get your partners around you to all market it together as an industry initiative and not just something where you're going to create an event and you want to be profitable.
I absolutely love that. And that's what I like, kind of the work we're doing here with this podcast and nextlevelcasinocareers.com. It's exactly that. It's not just about us. It's the kind of content I wish I would have had in 2015 when I found your work and things of that nature, as far as connecting with different leaders, hearing their stories, lessons learned, what's it like to work in the Vegas property versus a tribal gaming property? What are the new slot products coming out? All this kind of stuff. And then touching with outside experts like yourself, and how can you apply that with your business? That's what's rewarding. And I think that's why we're getting participation from others. And there really hasn't been a lot of no's, but once again, it's going to take a lot of time. But to me, it's all about the value. And I could just see on these faces right here, I think everyone knows they're putting value out there, which, you'll stay in the long game, which we talked about.
Well, one of the other things to say is that Content Marketing World only exists because we were blogging first. Like, it came out of the blog, and we received enough demand that says, can we get, I want to meet all these people. We were focusing on people's blog posts and getting them up on our site. And we had a little partner thing going online. They said, how do we get everybody together in person? I didn't even think about it until people started to basically show the demand. So that's why these things happen. So when you do something like what you're doing, you're going to start to get people coming to you with all kinds of ideas, and you're going to say, oh, that one works. And that's what happens when a community comes together around a content brand.
Joe, jumping ahead, this is obviously a hot topic
Sure.
across all industries, right? Which is NFTs, Web 3.0, blockchain technology. I just got a couple screenshots here. The first one being from an article today. The headline reads, Starbucks says rewards members can soon earn and buy NFTs. I feel like every week you could find a new brand doing this. Yeah. At the top right corner is a tangible example. Say what you want about Gary Vaynerchuk. The VeeFriends was the first thing I saw that I really started to understand. Oh, I see what's going on here, right? Yep. You can actually tap in real experiences to these NFTs. You can promote these NFTs. You can give value to these NFTs. And then in his case, he's trying to create this brand, and he thinks one day this might be like a Disney type, and you're going to have the early sketches. But the point is through those transactions and through that community, you can make royalties, right? And you can kind of keep feeding the machine. And then Joe, you have Tiltcoin, so I'm curious to know your perspective as you've kind of, obviously, I think you're kind of bullish as far as seeing the opportunity in this space. But as we think going forward, as it specifically relates to blockchain, NFTs, all the stuff that's grabbing the headlines, just kind of where's your head and where should marketers' heads be as it relates to navigating this new space?
Sure. I mean, so basically we're talking about tokenization. So NFTs are non-fungible tokens. They're unique. Something like a Tiltcoin that we have our own currency for is a fungible token, which means it's like the dollar or like Bitcoin. They're all interchangeable, but it's all about access and experiences. So if you look at something like a VeeFriends, Gary Vaynerchuk puts out these 10,000 funky looking pictures. And a lot of people listening to this might say, well, it's just art, whatever. It's not worth anything. It's not about some people like the art, but it's not about the art. It's because every one of those NFTs that Gary Vaynerchuk put out through VeeFriends gets you something. It gets you access to an event. It gets you a personal experience with somebody on the VeeFriends staff or with Gary himself, whatever. Starbucks will do the same thing. I'm sure like super loyal users will get an NFT, a token on the blockchain that they can own, and that they get some kind of access to do something. They get something great. So we do the same thing with Tiltcoin. If you get a certain amount of Tiltcoin, you can buy merchandise. You can get free training. If you have 20 Tiltcoin, you get into a private Discord group where you can have conversations with other Tilt VIP members. So that's what it's really about. And the difference over this versus a traditional membership is if I go out and I say, okay, I'm going to do a membership, I control that membership as the company. If I want to discontinue that membership, if I want to say that you're not a member and you haven't given me money, whatever, fine. That's all in the brand's control, whoever the organizer is. With a token, the token is actually owned by the community member. So the community member, whatever it is, they get ownership of that thing and they can control of that thing in their digital wallet. And whoever owns that thing gets the benefits of it. So it takes a little bit of, it's a little bit more loyalty. There's a little bit different kinds of rewards and different types of loving feeling, if you will, from that community that has that. And I can speak to you firsthand because we have our Tiltcoin project as well as our NFT project, which is our Creator Economy Expo, our event, Never Ending Tickets. These people are the most loyal. They're your super fans. So if anybody's listening to this and saying, okay, well, what's the use case for NFTs or fungible tokens or whatever? It's basically going out there, finding and rewarding your super fans and getting more of those super fans on your side. And everybody knows you get, just like the high rollers in Vegas, those are your best customers, right? You want to treat them right. You want to give them the red carpet experience. That's what we're doing with these kinds of programs, and lots of really good examples right now. I don't know what it's going to become, Kyle. I don't know where this is going to go, but there's something here. I'm very bullish about it. We're seeing the very first projects happen right now, and we're all testing and experimenting, just like we did with, Twitter back in 2007 or Facebook when it went beyond college kids. We're going to see something amazing happen. And I think the fact that a community has a little bit more control over their relationship with the company through this tokenization process is a big deal.
Yeah. And there's a clip from like the mid 90s. I think it's Katie Couric and Brian Gumbel. I might have that wrong, but later was made a commercial and they were talking about the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like it's exactly what we're all going to look like going forward. Like NFT, like it's just a JPEG and you can copy that. And I think you're right. I think we can't grasp our arms around it, but there's definitely opportunity there. I think we're seeing some great examples. When Disney launches a real NFT project, that's going to be.
Well, I think, there's some really interesting use cases that are coming right now. So I know that Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank is starting up an NFT process for watches. So basically, if you have a really expensive watch, you have the corresponding NFT with that to show that you have ownership of it. So when you sell the watch, you have to sell the digital certificate of authenticity with it. So some things like that are happening. I believe all tickets in the future will be NFTs. Because if let's say I buy a Cleveland Browns ticket, well, I have to go through a number of entities to sell that ticket. But if I owned an NFT of that ticket, I could sell it to you, Kyle, and we could do it person to person without any middle layer. That's what the amazing thing is happening with tokens and cryptocurrency and whatnot. So there's a lot of possibilities there because it gives more control to the buyer. And it's always a good thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Joe, thanks. I got some final questions here. My last slide here is a picture of you and Pam, your wife. And Joe, from what I read of your content and from what you speak, it seems, well, from what I observe, you guys are a team through and through, launching businesses, even setting up this podcast, Pam helped with that, and just giving advice to those next level careers, right? If someone wants to advance in their career or they want to, jump at that entrepreneur kind of opportunity, just curious to know your perspective. How important is it to have a relationship that it seems like you guys have being a true team as you navigate your career?
Oh, yeah, I'm totally blessed. I know there's a lot of partner situations that they can't work with each other, but we've had an excellent time for almost the last 15 years of working with each other, very close with each other. We can separate when we go out on a date versus and working with our kids and versus anything we do on the work side. And it was great. It worked out really well because she stayed home with the kids. I went out and worked. And when I ended up wanting to start what became Content Marketing Institute and she was at home, I asked her, I said, well, will you not go back and do the social work gig? Can you come and work for me? Because I really need your help. She's first rate operations and I'm all strategic. So I said, we would be perfect together. So it worked out really well that way and continues to. And I guess the whole thing is just honesty, but also separation. So we're really good about so tonight we're going to the Guardians game. We're going to go enjoy a baseball game. I guarantee you we won't talk about work one time. It's important to do. So you have to separate that at some point. So the working relationship is there. We do that at certain hours of the day and then we're off the clock. And I think you have to do that or it's just everything's about work all the time. And who wants to do that? Nobody does.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's hard to do, right? I mean, you're so driven and focused to grow and all the things that it takes time and you have a family. And it seems like to me, you try your best to kind of compartmentalize and make time to the best of your ability, right?
Yeah, set your goals. There's all kinds of things we could talk about on this one, but for anyone looking for a career, set your own goals about what you want to be as a human being. What are your career goals? What are your spiritual goals? What are your physical goals? What are your philanthropic goals? Write those goals down, review them on a regular basis, change them when it makes sense to change them, but focus on accomplishing things over certain periods of time, days, weeks, months, and into years and even decades, if you will. And I've always been that way because I wake up and I review my goals and I know what needs to be done instead of getting into email or social media or whatnot. So whatever your career you're looking for, put it down and then review it on a regular basis. And then you can wake up and say, okay, I need to do this today because that's who I want to be.
I love that. And that's actually something I applied to. I think in Epic Content Marketing, you said that you have either like a family mission statement or family values. And I took that. And when we did that, and it's a working document, right? Yes. But I think there's something to writing it down, understand what you're back for that alignment. A couple final ones here, Joe. And your not your podcast, and your newsletter, your random newsletter, which I highly recommend people subscribe. You said, I like the idea of a reverse bucket list. 5 to 10 things I'm going to stop doing because they're holding me back. What's one that you want to share as far as you think about your life going forward that you want to cut back on?
Well, I
or
can't.
stop?
Yeah, gambling. No. Well, I'll be honest. This has just happened in the last few months. I was putting on some weight that I was not happy with, and I looked at all the things I was doing, and I realized one of my big issues is I was loving desserts a lot, way too much, and I just made the decision, and I haven't had. Well, this has been about 6 months. I haven't had any desserts at all. Like, I just made a decision. I'm going to keep doing everything, and I just didn't have desserts, and since then I've lost 12 pounds. So I mean, it's just little things like that. And by the way, that's a really good one for just being healthy as well. But when you talk about things that I think we list those goals out, but you have to list things that are holding you back. Like what are the things that you're doing? Another thing that I had to work on was I like to get an email first thing in the morning. And I also realized that my best time creatively was in the morning. And so if I was taking up that creative time with email, that is not going to work. I was not going to get the best blog posts or the best podcasts out. So I had to push off email and say, okay, well, the first 2 hours of the day is for me. I won't get an email till 10 o'clock, let's say. So those are the types of things that I try to look at so that I can be a better person, or, better entrepreneur, or better manager, if you will.
I think it's a great point. And so often we focus on what successful people do. And you kind of talk a lot about what they don't do and what can you cut back on. I think that's a great point. You kind of mentioned it, but personal morning or evening routine that's helped you that would probably help others if they adapted.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Number one, I can tell you that the most important thing that I did in order to have a successful exit of the company is I wrote down my goals. I review them in the morning, and I review them before I went to sleep at night. And because I believe at night, the brain sort of works its own subconscious and helps you when you get into the morning. And because I said, when I was deep in debt in 2008, I had a goal of selling our company for more than $15 million. And I had it right there, and I read it all the time. And then I made decisions strategically, whether I knew it or not, based on those things that I reviewed. So that was sort of my morning routine going into that. And then the other thing is, whenever I possibly can, if I can't for whatever reason, it's fine. But I like to do my running in the morning. So I'll go, get up. I generally read in the morning, and I'll look at my goals. I'll read, and then I like to get into running, and then I'm getting into the rest of the day. Sometimes I get all this anxiety built up and things, and all those things go away from me if I can get out there and run for 30 minutes. So that's kind of my deal.
Makes sense. And, I have young kids. I've talked about this before, but I think a lot of people can relate. I used to be a night person, not anymore, because I need that time for myself, right? And I encourage my wife to do the same thing. We talk about it a lot, is to get that creative space, whatever that is for you. I think that's important, because then off your day goes of emails and meetings and tactics. Right. And, so it's important on so many different levels. In 2032, Joe, if you wouldn't mind finishes in this sentence, in 2032, Joe will say the thing we underestimated the most in 2022 was what?
Time. I think that my biggest concern with the people and I'm not judging, these are just observations, but the people I see around me is they don't realize how valuable their time is when it gets sucked in through, especially things like TikTok and Instagram. When I see them on there 3-4 hours, or during meetings, or we're so tied to this device. And I think it's going to come back and bite them. And we're going to realize that we're not truly experiencing life. And by the way, we just talked about a lot of these things, right? But personally, I'm not on TikTok because I don't want to get addicted to that platform, because I know it is built to be addictive. So I have to make sure that, if I'm going to have an experience, I'm going to choose to have it. I'm not going to get sucked into watching a series on Netflix or what. So my wife and I, we don't watch series, and we don't really get into social media, because we'll go see a movie. It's time limit. We're done, but I'm not going to watch, 7 seasons of some show and lose a lot of that time that I could be doing other things. So that's my biggest concern, is watch your time. It is so valuable, and it goes so fast.
Yep. that I couldn't agree more. And I always say that I feel anxiety and distraction are highly correlated, because you kind of just distract yourself and numb yourself for now you could do it 24/7. Eventually, right, whatever you're escaping from is going to catch up to you. So I couldn't agree more. Some final ones here, kind of quick nature. Browns over or under 7.5 wins. What do you got?
Oh, over, because I picked them at 8.
Oh, there you go, right there.
Yeah, we just finished on This Old Marketing, our podcast. We talked about, because Robert's a Cowboys fan, I'm a Browns fan, and I picked them, the Browns, at 8 and 9 this year. Although I didn't anticipate them winning their first game, so maybe, I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's higher, but I'm going with 8.
Yeah, man, yesterday was such a weird day in the NFL.
Oh,
a lot of craziness, but week 1, it's hard to jump to conclusions. Joe, I would recommend everything that you're putting out, but like I said, I think what people could take from today's conversation is some of the things that you talked about and how they can apply that within their kind of marketing efforts, in general, just career advice. But if people want to find out more of what you have to offer, kind of where should they go?
So if you're interested, it depends on what you're interested in. So if you're all about content creation and you like that talk, it's thetilt.com. So the Tilt got 2 times a week newsletter. That's great. If you want more of my personal, like what's going on, you mentioned the random newsletter, that's joepulizzi.com. You can get the random newsletter. All these things are free. And then my motivational content podcast is Content Inc. Where's the market of content marketing and where are we headed? That's this old marketing. And then I've got all kinds of books. You mentioned Epic Content Marketing. My latest is Content Inc. It's how you build a model like this. And what else there is there? So I would say that's probably enough. You're like, and you can follow. I'm at Joe Pulizzi everywhere. Follow me, reach out to me. I'm fairly accessible. I love to help. And the only thing is I guess if you don't like any of those things, but you like thrillers, I wrote a novel called The Will to Die that I'm very proud of, and it stars a marketing guy, but it's a hometown murder mystery, if you will, and that's kind of what I plan to do in the next couple of years, is write a couple more novels.
Yeah, and all these channels I could just say, as someone who watches your content, listens to your content, you practice what you preach, which is putting value first, and that's how you've been so successful. So once again, Joe, thanks for spending some time with me here today. I'm going to get you out in the final question we ask everybody. Once again, how can someone take their career to the next level? There's 3 tips you would provide on that front as far as things someone could start doing today to take their career to the next level. What would those 3 things be for you?
Yeah, we mentioned the one. I would if I'm getting my career started right now, I would want to build an audience. I don't care what industry you're in. So I absolutely would look at becoming an expert in anything. So become an expert in whatever that is, build an audience, podcast, newsletter, practice, work out the bugs, figure out your voice, start learning how to tell stories. Storytelling is going to be important wherever you're at. So that's the one thing. Second thing is, we mentioned this as well, write down your goals and review them on an ongoing basis. And then the third thing is, have something philanthropic in your life that you focus on, that you can support. Maybe the greatest thing that I'm involved in, and we haven't even talked about it, is we have a nonprofit called Orange Effect Foundation, where we drive funds to cover speech therapy costs for autistic children. We started that in 2007. And having that as part of everything that we do, that's probably the most important thing. We just happened to talk about it. But having something like that makes everything else that you're going to be doing that much better. And to be honest, it is what it is. It looks really good on a resume as well. If you're behind something and you can show the people that you want to work for that it's just not all about business, that you do have something special about you and you're a different person because you care about other people. So I would say those 3 things.
Joe, thanks again. I know community and giving back is a huge part of what you do too. So I'm glad that you mentioned that right at the end. Just once again, thanks again for everything that you do, putting that content out there. I think people are going to find this conversation valuable, but thanks again, and have a good Thursday. I believe you're speaking at Content Marketing World.
Thursday. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kyle. It was so great to talk to you again, and hope we can do it again sometime.
Thank you.
Check out more episodes on nextlevelcasinocareers.com.